The moment Elena saw her name written in black marker on a plastic folding chair placed beside the garbage bins outside the restaurant, she knew the last 7 years of friendship had been nothing but a carefully constructed lie. Her hands trembled as she clutched the beautifully wrapped gift she had spent 3 months saving for, her heart shattering into pieces so small she wondered if she would ever find them all again. Through the elegant French windows, she could see her best friend Jessica laughing with 30 other guests seated at tables draped in white linen and gold accents, crystal chandeliers casting warm light on faces that had smiled at her just last week. Elena's olive skin paled as the March wind cut through her simple navy blue dress, the nicest thing she owned, purchased from a thrift store and carefully mended at the seams. She was 31 years old, standing 5 feet 4 inches tall, with long dark brown hair she had spent 2 hours curling for this occasion, and warm hazel eyes that now brimmed with tears she refused to let fall. What had she done to deserve this humiliation? And more importantly, what would happen when her husband of 2 years, Marcus, discovered how his wife had been treated by the very women she defended to him week after week? The answer to that question would change everything, and not in any way Elena could have possibly imagined. Inside, the party continued without the slightest acknowledgement that someone was missing. Elena stood frozen, her modest black heels sinking slightly into the damp ground near the service entrance. She could hear muffled laughter, the clinking of expensive glasses, the sophisticated jazz music that Jessica had specifically chosen because it made her feel cultured. A waiter emerged from the back door, nearly colliding with Elena, his eyes widening in confusion before quickly looking away with something that resembled pity. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked quietly, balancing a tray of empty champagne flutes. "You shouldn't be standing out here. The party is inside." Elena forced a smile that felt like broken glass on her lips. "Apparently, my place is right here." She gestured to the plastic chair with her name scrawled across it. The waiter's expression shifted from confusion to horror as understanding dawned. He opened his mouth to say something, perhaps to offer comfort or assistance, but another server called his name sharply from inside, and he disappeared with an apologetic glance. For 10 agonizing minutes, Elena stood there, unable to move forward or backward. Part of her screamed to walk through those doors, to confront Jessica in front of everyone and demand an explanation. Another part, the part that had grown up in poverty, that had been told she was never quite good enough, whispered that perhaps this was exactly where she belonged. She had always suspected she was the charity case of their friend group, the one they kept around to feel better about themselves. Now she had proof. She remembered how she had met Jessica 7 years ago at a community college night class. Elena had been working 2 jobs to afford tuition while caring for her ailing mother. Jessica, with her designer bags and casual mentions of European vacations, had seemed like a visitor from another world. But she had been kind, or so Elena thought. She had included Elena in brunches, shopping trips, birthday celebrations. She had made Elena feel seen for the first time in her life. It had all been an elaborate performance. The back door swung open again, and this time 3 women emerged, their designer dresses and perfectly styled hair marking them instantly as guests rather than staff. Elena recognized them all: Vanessa, 33, with her platinum blonde hair and perpetual sneer; Mia, 29, whose family owned half the commercial real estate downtown; and Brittany, 35, who had married old money and never let anyone forget it. They were the core of Jessica's inner circle, and they had always treated Elena with a condescension so subtle she had convinced herself she was imagining it. "Oh my God, she actually came." Vanessa's voice dripped with amusement as she spotted Elena. "I told Jessica she wouldn't have the nerve, but here she is." Mia pulled out her phone, and Elena realized with dawning horror that she was being recorded. This is too perfect. The little charity case showed up for her humiliation. "Did you see your special seat?" Brittany asked, gesturing to the plastic chair with an exaggerated flourish. "We thought it suited you better than sitting inside with actual guests. You know, people who actually contribute to the group." Elena's voice emerged smaller than she intended. "What did I ever do to any of you?" The three women exchanged glances and burst into laughter so cruel it seemed to echo off the brick walls of the alleyway. Vanessa stepped closer, her expensive perfume overwhelming in the small space. "What did you do?" "You existed, Elena. You showed up at our brunches with your sad little coupons and your fake designer bags. You talked about your cleaning job like it was something to be proud of. You made us all uncomfortable with your poverty." She said the word like it was a disease. "Jessica was too nice to tell you directly, so we planned this little intervention. Consider it a gift of clarity. The truth is," Mia added, still recording, "we've been laughing about you for years. The way you dress, the way you talk, that pathetic little apartment you pretend is cozy. Even your husband probably married you out of pity. What's his name again? Mark? Matthew?" "Marcus," Elena whispered, but her voice was drowned out by their laughter. "Oh right, Marcus. The one who's always traveling for work." Brittany made air quotes with her fingers. "Honey, successful men don't marry women like you. Whatever he's told you about his job, I guarantee he's just as broke as you are. Probably a traveling salesman or something equally embarrassing." What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Marcus Chen was the sole heir to the Chen technology empire, a conglomerate worth $47 billion with offices on 6 continents. What they couldn't have possibly imagined was that he had chosen anonymity to find genuine love, and he had found it in Elena, a woman who had shared her last $20 with him when they met at a bus stop 3 years ago, thinking he was just another struggling worker. And what none of them could have anticipated was that Marcus was, at that very moment, sitting in his car just around the corner, having arrived early to pick up his wife, and hearing every single word through the phone she had accidentally pocket-dialed when she retrieved it from her purse. Inside his black Mercedes, a vehicle so understated that people assumed it was a simple sedan rather than a $300,000 custom build, Marcus Chen sat motionless. His dark eyes, usually warm with quiet intelligence, had turned to ice. At 36 years old, standing 6 feet 2 inches tall, with broad shoulders beneath his deliberately modest gray sweater and dark jeans, he looked nothing like the billionaire he was. That had always been intentional. After years of people pursuing him for his family's money, he had wanted to disappear, to find someone who would love the man beneath the fortune. He had found her in Elena. She had given him her umbrella in a rainstorm, offered to buy him coffee when she noticed his hands shaking from cold, and never once asked what he did for a living or why he was always vague about his consulting work. She loved him for his terrible cooking, his habit of reading 3 books simultaneously, his way of remembering every small thing she mentioned. When he finally told her the truth about his identity, 6 months into their relationship, she had simply shrugged and asked if this meant she had to start dressing differently. He had fallen more deeply in love with her in that moment than he thought possible. Now, hearing these women tear apart the kindest person he had ever known, something inside him shifted permanently. His phone lit up with a text from his executive assistant. "Sir, your presence requested for the Chen Foundation Gala announcement. Press conference in 2 hours." He ignored it. Another text, this one from his mother. "Marcus, the board is waiting for your decision on the Prestige Hotel acquisition." He ignored that too. Instead, he began making calls. Back in the alleyway, Elena's humiliation continued. More guests had filtered outside, drawn by the commotion, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to amused. Jessica herself finally emerged, resplendent in a custom white gown that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe, her red hair perfectly styled, her pale skin glowing with expensive treatments. "Elena," she exclaimed with theatrical surprise. "You found your seat. I hope you understand, the restaurant only had so much space, and I had to prioritize guests who, well, fit in with the crowd." She gestured to her own elegant appearance, then let her eyes travel meaningfully over Elena's thrift store dress. "I'm sure you understand." 7 years, Elena's voice finally found strength, though it trembled with emotion. "I thought we were friends, Jessica. I defended you to everyone. When people said you were shallow, I told them they didn't know the real you. When Marcus questioned why you never visited our apartment, I made excuses for you. 7 years of my life, and this is what I was to you? Entertainment? Jessica's false sympathy evaporated into cruel amusement. Oh, Elena. You were useful. Someone had to make me look good by comparison. The crowd behind her laughed, a chorus of mockery that seemed to grow louder with each passing second. What happened next would become legend in their social circle, a story retold for years with varying degrees of accuracy, but always with the same core of disbelief. A helicopter appeared overhead, its rotors cutting through the evening air with a sound so commanding that conversation stopped mid-sentence. It didn't land, the space was too confined, but it hovered low enough that everyone could see the Chen Technology logo emblazoned on its side, a symbol recognizable to anyone who had ever opened a business magazine or watched the financial news. Simultaneously, 3 black SUVs pulled into the alley from different entrances, their windows tinted so dark that the occupants were invisible. Men in suits emerged, their earpieces and professional demeanor marking them as security professionals of the highest caliber. They formed a pathway from the vehicles to where Elena stood, frozen in confusion. And then Marcus stepped out of the Mercedes that had been parked around the corner all along. But he wasn't wearing his simple gray sweater anymore. Somewhere in those 20 minutes, he had changed into a custom-tailored black suit that cost more than most people's annual salaries, his presence transforming from unassuming to commanding in an instant. His shoes clicked against the pavement with measured authority as he walked toward his wife, past the assembled crowd of suddenly silent partygoers, past Jessica whose face had drained of all color, past the 3 women who had led the attack. He stopped directly in front of Elena, and in front of everyone, he cupped her face in his hands with such tenderness that several onlookers gasped. "I heard everything," he said softly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "And I am so sorry, my love, that you ever spent a moment of your precious time on people who couldn't see your worth." "Marcus?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "What's happening?" He smiled, and in that smile was 7 years of secrets about to be revealed. "What's happening is that the world is about to learn what I've always known, that you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, and anyone who fails to see that has revealed the poverty of their own soul." He turned to face Jessica, whose designer gown suddenly looked costume-like, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the fear creeping into her features. "You asked my wife what she ever did to deserve this treatment," Marcus said, his voice carrying with the calm authority of someone who had commanded boardrooms since his early 20s. "Let me answer that question. She did nothing except be genuine in a world of performers. She showed compassion while you showed cruelty. She lifted others while you pushed them down." He paused, letting his words sink in. "My name is Marcus Chen. Perhaps you've heard of my family." The recognition rippled through the crowd like electricity. Mia's phone clattered to the ground, her recording forgotten. Vanessa took an involuntary step backward. Brittany's husband, who had been watching from the doorway, suddenly went very pale, no doubt calculating how many of his investments touched Chen Technology interests. "I know everything about each of you," Marcus continued, pulling out his own phone and scrolling through it casually. "Your businesses, your debts, your secrets. Did you know that 3 of the companies represented at this party rely on Chen Technology supply chains? That your husband's firm, Brittany, is currently seeking approval for a project that requires signatures from a board I control? That your family's real estate holdings, Mia, depend on commercial relationships that could disappear with a single phone call?" "Mr. Chen," Jessica's voice had transformed from cruel confidence to desperate pleading. "This was all a misunderstanding. Elena is my dear friend. This was a joke that went too far. Enough." The single word cut through her excuses like a blade. "Elena, my love, would you prefer to go home, or would you like to see something?" Elena looked at her husband, really looked at him for perhaps the first time. She had always known there was more to him than he revealed, had respected his privacy even when curiosity burned. Now, seeing him in his full authority, she understood why he had hidden this world from her. It was protection. It was preservation of something pure. "I want to stay," she said quietly. "I want to see." What followed was a masterclass in elegant destruction that no one present would ever forget. Marcus made calls. Right there, in the alleyway beside the garbage bins where they had seated his wife, he systematically dismantled the social standing of every person who had participated in Elena's humiliation. Investments were withdrawn. Business partnerships dissolved. Social connections severed. The Chin Foundation, one of the most prestigious charitable organizations in the country, removed Jessica from its upcoming gala guest list, an event she had been bragging about attending for months. Mia's father received a call informing him that a major tenant would not be renewing their lease, representing a loss of millions annually. But Marcus wasn't cruel. He wasn't seeking destruction for its own sake. He was strategic, precise, and ultimately merciful in ways his targets didn't deserve. "I could ruin each of you completely," he said, once the initial calls were complete. "I could ensure that none of you ever work in this city again, that your children's private school applications are mysteriously rejected, that every door you try to open slams shut. I have the resources and, after tonight, certainly the motivation." The crowd waited, barely breathing. "But I won't," Marcus continued. "Do you know why? Because my wife wouldn't want that. Because Elena, the woman you seated beside garbage, the woman you mocked for her kindness, has more grace than all of you combined. She will spend tonight forgiving you, even though you don't deserve it. She will lose sleep wondering if there was something she could have done differently, even though the fault lies entirely with you. That is who she is. That is why she is worth more than everything I own." He turned back to Elena, his expression softening. "My love, I'd like to take you somewhere. There's an announcement I need to make tonight, and I was hoping you would make it with me." Within an hour, Elena found herself standing in the grand ballroom of the Chen Foundation headquarters, surrounded by journalists, cameras, and some of the most influential people in the country. She was still wearing her thrift store dress, her carefully curled hair now slightly windswept from the helicopter ride, her makeup showing traces of tears she hadn't quite managed to prevent. But no one looked at her with anything but respect. Marcus stood at a podium, looking at his wife with such open adoration that several audience members later admitted to crying. "Tonight, I was supposed to announce the Chen Foundation's newest initiative, a $2 billion investment in educational programs for underprivileged communities. I'm still making that announcement, but I'm adding something else." He extended his hand, and Elena walked to stand beside him on trembling legs. "This is my wife, Elena Chen. Many of you don't know her because she has allowed me to protect her from this world. But tonight, she showed me that she is stronger than I ever imagined, and she deserves to be known." He turned to face her directly, the cameras forgotten, the audience irrelevant. "Elena, I fell in love with you because you gave a stranger your umbrella in a rainstorm. I fell deeper when you worked 18-hour days to care for your mother and never complained. I fell completely when you learned who I was and asked if you still had to take the bus to work. You are the reason I believe in goodness. You are the reason I believe that wealth means nothing without kindness, that status is worthless without substance, that success is empty without love." Elena's tears flowed freely now, but she was smiling, the first genuine smile since she had seen her name on that plastic chair. "The additional announcement I want to make tonight," Marcus continued, "is that the Chen Foundation will be establishing a new division called the Elena Initiative. It will be dedicated to supporting individuals who face social exclusion based on economic circumstances, providing scholarships, job training, professional clothing assistance, and most importantly, mentorship and community. My wife will be its director, and she will be given complete autonomy to shape it as she sees fit." The applause was thunderous, but Elena barely heard it. She was looking at her husband, at this man who had hidden his entire world to find authentic love, who had witnessed her worst humiliation and transformed it into her greatest triumph. "You didn't have to do any of this," she whispered, her voice caught by the microphone and broadcast to everyone present. Marcus smiled. I know. That's why I wanted to. 3 months later, the Elena initiative had already transformed 150 lives. Elena approached her work with the same compassion she had shown to a stranger at a bus stop, the same kindness she had extended to friends who were never truly friends at all. She created programs that paired struggling individuals with mentors who understood their experiences, provided professional development opportunities that went beyond surface-level assistance, and built a community of people who had been told they didn't belong, until they found each other. Jessica's birthday party had become infamous. Videos of that night had circulated despite efforts to suppress them, and the contrast between the cruelty shown to Elena and her gracious response had resonated with millions. The women who had mocked her found their social standing permanently altered, not through Marcus's direct intervention, but through the natural consequences of their character being publicly revealed. Many quietly left the city. A few, surprisingly, reached out to Elena with genuine apologies that she accepted with the same grace that defined her. But the true transformation was internal. Elena no longer questioned her worth. She no longer wondered if she belonged or if she deserved good things. She had seen, in the most dramatic way possible, that the people who judged her were the ones lacking value, and that her simple, compassionate approach to life was exactly what the world needed more of. One evening, exactly 1 year after the incident that had changed everything, Elena and Marcus sat on the balcony of their home, a home they had kept modest by billionaire standards, because Elena insisted she didn't need marble floors to be happy. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly, leaning into his shoulder. "Revealing who you are? All the privacy we've lost?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I regret that you were hurt. I regret that I wasn't there sooner to stop it. But I don't regret the world knowing you, Elena. I don't regret that millions of people now know there's a woman out there who would give her last umbrella to a stranger, who forgives those who wound her, who turns cruelty into kindness." He kissed her forehead. "Some treasures are too precious to hide." Elena smiled, thinking about the letter she had received that morning from a young woman named Sarah, one of the first beneficiaries of the Elena initiative. Sarah had grown up in poverty, had been told her entire life that she would never amount to anything, had nearly given up on her dreams of becoming a nurse. Now, with the initiative's support, she was graduating at the top of her class. "Thank you," Sarah had written. "Thank you for seeing worth in people the world overlooks. Thank you for proving that kindness isn't weakness. Thank you for being exactly who you are." Elena had cried reading those words, not from sadness but from the overwhelming realization that her pain had been transformed into purpose. The worst night of her life had become the foundation for her greatest contribution to the world. "You know what I've learned?" Elena said to Marcus as stars began appearing in the evening sky. "I've learned that the people who try to diminish you are usually afraid of their own smallness. I've learned that real worth isn't measured in designer dresses or exclusive parties. And I've learned that sometimes, the greatest gift is being exactly who you are, thrift store dress and all, and trusting that the right people will recognize your value." Marcus pulled her closer. "The right people always do." Somewhere in the city, Jessica was starting over, having lost the social circle she had spent years building. Her cruelty had cost her everything she valued. But Elena didn't feel satisfaction at this, she felt something closer to sadness. She hoped Jessica would eventually learn what she had learned, that building yourself up by tearing others down leaves you with nothing but empty victories. As for Elena, she had discovered that her greatest strength had always been her compassion, her resilience, her refusal to let difficulty harden her heart. These were qualities that couldn't be bought with any amount of money, and they were worth more than all the billions in the world. The girl who had been seated beside the garbage bins had become a woman who changed lives. The dress that had been mocked was now displayed in her office as a reminder of how far she had come. And the love that had seemed too good to be true had proven itself to be the most genuine thing of all. Sometimes, Elena reflected, life breaks you down so it can build you back up stronger. Sometimes, the darkest moments precede the brightest dawns. And sometimes, the people who try to destroy you end up giving you the greatest gift of all, the chance to discover who you really are. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that kindness always triumphs, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Hit like to spread positivity, and subscribe to join a community that believes in the power of genuine love and unbreakable grace. Your support helps these life-changing stories reach the hearts that need them most.